My name's Tim Brooks. I started the Endangered Alphabets project 15 years ago when I discovered that 85 to 90% of all of the world's scripts and writing systems and alphabets were in danger of extinction. And I did something perhaps a little unexpected. I decided I was going to carve pieces of text in those endangered scripts and exhibit them and talk about them. And when I did this, people were fascinated. And they would come up to me and they would say, this is incredible. Where can we learn more about this? And I would say, well, there really isn't anywhere. And so in 2019, I decided I would create an online atlas of endangered alphabets so people could go and read all about these fascinating scripts and the cultures that gave birth to them. The online atlas was successful beyond any of my dreams. It has been visited by millions of people from nearly 200 countries. And now the book, the Atlas of Endangered Alphabets, is my way of presenting this subject to the world in print form. The atlas contains about 100 scripts. It's by no means all the minority writing scripts in the world, because at one extreme, it's pretty much impossible to tell if nobody is using a script anymore, unless you travel to, say, Sierra Leone and go house to house looking. At the other extreme, there is an extraordinary rejuvenation and rediscovery taking place all over the world, where cultures that have been colonized or overthrown or marginalized, they're starting to create their own scripts for themselves and their cultures. They no longer want to be using the writing system of the people who overran them. This is particularly true in Africa, where you have a number of scripts that have been created not only with the aim of representing a particular language, but actually representing all the languages in Africa, and thereby once and for all overthrowing the colonial yoke. So I imagine that the reader of this book will be struck pretty much by the same things that I was struck by when I first started voyaging out among the endangered alphabets. The first thing that struck me was the sheer visual variety. There are scripts that are just extraordinarily graceful or beautiful or surprising or mathematical. Some of them barely look like writing at all as we think of it, and that's really important because it turns out that our understanding of writing is actually extremely limited and limiting. Because we use the Latin alphabet, and the Latin alphabet is the bully script of the world, it never occurs to us to wonder how other people think about writing and about what writing means to them. The second thing that struck me might be called usage. So out there in the world, there are scripts that are only used in specific sacred ceremonies. There are scripts that are used for divination, sometimes in combination with dice. There are scripts that are used for accounting and bookkeeping so that other people who don't know those scripts can't see and understand your record keeping. These scripts are so vital and so much a part of the cultural community that in one case, if somebody dies without having learned to read or write, the priest will sit beside the corpse in the interval between death and cremation and will teach the corpse his or her letters so they may enter the afterlife fully prepared. The third element I found fascinating, and I think my reader will, is the question of how does a script become endangered? You may think a script is like a tree. It grows, it flourishes, it gets old, it falls out of use. This is never the case. And the story of the scripts in my atlas is a story of conquest and subjugation of one culture trying to obliterate another culture's sense of purpose and dignity by superimposing the winning script on the defeated culture. In many cases, that conquest is more economical than warlike, but it's just as inevitable. It's often an issue of prejudice, and people in one community are sneered at by their neighbors for being backward or primitive because of the script that they use. So this atlas is not just a list of alphabets from around the world. It's a glimpse at how people treat each other, seen through the lens of writing. And also how people, through writing, maintain their sense of dignity and identity in history and self-respect, especially in the face of adversity. Perhaps the most important thing I came to realize was how much these unique scripts mean to the people who use them, who used them, who developed them. We just don't get that. We don't understand it because for us, letters are just letters. We get taught them, we learn them, we use them. That's it. They're just there. They are used for every purpose, no matter how trivial. It's like for us, writing is linguistic duct tape. Because virtually everybody else we know uses the same set of letters we do, it doesn't occur to us that they might have the same value to a given community as, say, that community's own spoken language. We understand why the Welsh stand up for the spoken Welsh language, why the Catalans stand up for Catalan. That makes sense to us. But because everybody we know uses the Latin alphabet, the whole idea that a script might be deeply connected to a culture, or that it might become endangered at some point, it's completely inconceivable to us. But to the world's minority cultures, their writing may be as important to them and as deep an expression of who they are as their music or their dance or their art or their food. So superficially, the Atlas of Endangered Alphabets looks like a whimsical geography book. But in practice, as you start reading it, you realize that it touches on almost every discipline imaginable, not just language and ethnography and anthropology, but also economics and human rights and social justice, graphic design, typography, the history of communications. All of these subjects are touched on and are rolling around the atlas. And the really remarkable thing about this book is that, from what I can gather, nobody has looked at writing in this way before. So the Atlas of Endangered Alphabets is not just new, but new. This is a book to change the way people think about writing in the same way that a book about endangered species changes the way people think about species. This is a book to change the world. Thanks.